In the summer of 1971, I was 6 years old, and I was playing tennis at the local high school. And a famous tennis coach spotted me and talked to my parents and started me on my journey to be a professional tennis player. So in the next year or two, I was playing kids my age from all over, and I was winning almost every match I played. And the coach said I was one of the best players in the country, if not the world, for my age. Well, so what happens when you're in that situation is they push you up in age division. You start playing kids that are 3, 4, 5 years older. And so I started to lose a little. And all the praise that I was getting from all the people around me, the local press, people, the parents of other players, just everyone around, including my own family, all of a sudden the praise turned to criticism. And I was only about 8 years old, and I didn't really understand it. My coach sat me down one day and gave me literally the greatest advice I've ever gotten in my entire life. This changed my life, built my fortune as an adult in business, and just gave me a freedom that nothing else has ever given me. I've never read it in a book. I only heard it in this speech, and now I'm going to give it to you. And here it is. It'll change your life. No exaggeration. He said, Steve, here's the thing. You always have to be, no matter what other people say, whether they're praising you or they're punishing you or they're criticizing you, you have to be at peace with yourself. You have to live and die with your own decisions, no matter how many people say you're great or how many people say you're not great. You got to live and die on your own decisions. And when all the press is done and they're tired of taking pictures of you and everyone goes home and you're sitting in your room, on your bed, and you're thinking about what happened when you lose, you've got to know that you did everything you could to win. And that's all that counts. Let all of their opinions go, the praise and the criticism. He said, because if you don't, you'll never last. You'll end up quitting, because no one can go up and down emotionally that high and that low. And that's what these people will do to you. They don't do it purposely, but that's what happens when you receive massive praise and massive criticism. And I took that lesson to heart, because as I went through the years of attempting to be a professional player, I got a lot of press and I got a lot of heat. And when I really started losing, because I was losing my interest in the game as I became a teenager, and a little bit into that, I stopped practicing as much, I stopped caring as much, I started to lose a lot more. And the criticism was severe, in my opinion. Okay, and I always used to say to myself, you know what? I can lay my pillow on my head on the pillow, and I can be at peace with myself, and that's all that counts. And I took that into business. And when I wanted to be a professional speaker, I studied mental toughness. I coached professional athletes in mental toughness, all kinds of teams like the Boston Celtics and the Florida Marlins and the Ohio State Buckeyes, and on and on. And then I took it into corporate America. What I found in the speaking business was pretty interesting. I found a lot of people that like to talk. Okay, they like to hear themselves talk. I like to talk too, so I get it. They like to be on stage. They like applause. Yay, you're great, you're great, you're great. Well, such a great speaker, et cetera, et cetera. You're so smart. Yay. They like that. Everyone likes that. I like that. Everybody likes it. Okay, but what they didn't have, and what they still don't have for the most part of the professional speaking world that I spent 30 years in as a business, they don't have the ability to weather criticism. And because of that inability, they don't take chances. They don't give their real opinions. They don't really state their positions on stage. They're afraid. They're terrified. They're not, I wouldn't say they're not courageous. They just can't handle the criticism. So what happens is they're relegated to things like motivational speaking and trying to people please, and they're addicted to the approval of other people, including audiences. And that's why they only go so far, because they're terrified of criticism. I was able to take that mentality, and I'm not bragging about this. It was just that I had this coaching early on, and I adopted it immediately when I was 8 years old. And I kept it through my whole life, and it changed everything for me. And that's why I want to pass it on to you, because anyone can really do this, but you have to be conscious of it. You've got to really be thinking about it all the time, okay? I went in to be a speaker on mental toughness, and I realized very quickly that people would tell companies that they're giving speeches to how great they were and how fantastic they were and how, they have so much potential, when they had no idea about who these people were. It's just another audience they're speaking to that day. The next day they're across the country speaking to someone else. Well, I didn't want to do that because I knew it was BS. I don't know these people. I don't know how great they are. Maybe they suck. I don't know. So I started doing research on my companies, and I found that most people are actually, that are struggling, the sales teams that were struggling that I was working with, were because they had substandard skills, they had substandard mental toughness, they had substandard people skills, etc., all these different things. And I went to those audiences and I told them that. And people said in the speaking business, said, oh my God, you're going to go broke. No one's going to like you. I never cared if they liked me, because as long as I liked me and I was at peace with myself, that's all I needed. Yeah, do you prefer when people like you and they say you're right? Of course, you prefer it. They call it preference over need. That's what psychologists call it. You prefer that they like you, they prefer that they agree with you and all the rest of it, but you don't need it. Preference over need. I never needed their approval. I still don't need people's approval. I like it, I just don't need it. So I was able to go into these companies and get booed literally on stage saying, you guys are doing terrible. Your survey is terrible. Your research we've done is terrible. We're going to turn you around in the next 12 months. And for those of you that jump on, you're going to be part of the improvement. We're going to raise sales by $100 million, or whatever it was at the time, in the next 12 months. And for those of you that resist, you're probably going to get fired. It's up to you. And they would boo me because they're scared. And they thought they would push me out. Well, they didn't push me out. I did it for 25 straight years, and we turned around every organization at some level. We turned around every organization in terms of increased sales and market share that we ever worked with, to some level, some far more than others. But we never had a negative result, which was pretty amazing, except the companies that quit the contracts. Okay, so the point of it is that because I was able to tell them the truth and not the BS, okay, I was able to build a fortune in speaking, whereas most speakers are broke. They make a lot of money, they go from one speech to another, whatever, but they're telling people these basic pedestrian things. Okay, I'm not saying you want to be a speaker. What I'm saying is that in anything in life, if you don't need people's approval, if you don't need them to like you, oh, you're free. It's the greatest lesson I ever learned in my life. I'm 60 years old. I've never learned a better lesson, a more powerful lesson I built my entire fortune on this, because I was one of the only people in the world that would go into these major companies and tell them the truth based on research, not my opinion, and they didn't like it. Well, most people aren't going to do that because, they're going to get pushback. Well, I didn't care about the pushback. What I cared about was the result. And we got the results over and over and over. Then they become your best friends. But along the way, they're fighting me. They would try to get me fired all the time. And in speakers' meetings, they would say, you're crazy. This is never going to last. Well, it lasted 25 years, and I never have to work another day in my life. I didn't have to 10 years in, And so and that's the magic of it. So it's something you have to talk yourself into for sure. You have to work on it every single day. But if you can get to this point, your whole life will change. You won't need other people's opinions. You won't need anything from other people, hardly, unless you want it, okay? And so that's the greatest mental toughness lesson I ever learned, and I really recommend that you implement it if you haven't already. Thanks.